What is up, Indoor Football Nation? It is 10 o'clock p.m. over here in the East Coast on a middle of weekday, which means only one thing. It is Wager Wednesday in the Indoor Football League, and I am delighted to be back again with another edition of our weekly skit. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Alex Schuberth. I am a hardcore indoor football fan, part-time contributor, IFL contributor for Sports Coast to Coast, a Pacific Northwest-based sports forum site that specializes in coverage of the Indoor Football League. If you consider yourself an IFL fan, it is definitely worth a look. You got team-by-team breakdowns over there, as well as game previews, recaps, and everything in between, basically fulfilling all of your IFL fandom needs. So glad to have you aboard. Appreciate you taking some time from your Wednesday evening, probably taking a break from filling out those last-minute March Madness brackets. And I'm sure that will command most of the attention of the weekend, but we've got some Indoor Football League games still to cover. An exciting slate coming up with games beginning on Friday. So let's swing over here. Oops. And get cracking. So tonight we're going to recap the mesmerizing action that was week one. We had two games kick off the 2024 season, and we had mixed results. We had a win that we really had to grind out on Saturday's game, and a heart-crushing loss on Sunday that I'm not going to say it could have been avoided, but we did have some things go beyond our control that contributed to that particular bet losing. And that ties into some rules that I forgot to mention last week that I will be sticking to when evaluating bets going forward. So I'll be sure to talk about those once we get into more detailed recaps of week one. Once we reflect on those, we'll take a stab at week two. We've got Friday through Monday, 6 games on the schedule. We'll also be taking a shot at a 3-leg parlay for the first time this year. If you've read the column over at SC2C, you have an idea of what that is. And we will wrap up by looking at the futures bets of who will win the 2024 IFL Championship for those interested in that market. I've boiled down the betting definitions here if you ever want to come back and refer to this at any point. I went over these definitions and a few more in greater detail last week. So if you want a primer, you can always go back to the week one Wager Wednesday video to get a glimpse of what those are if you need to familiarize yourself with it. You'll hear me use these terminology, like I said, throughout the entire season. That's just kind of how we make sense of everything that's thrown at us as far as IFL betting goes. So, like we said before, last week we had a couple games, both of them going right down to the wire. We had Arizona laying 5.5 points against the Northern Arizona Wranglers on the road. And that one was dicey. Arizona had an 11-point lead late. The Wranglers had just scored on a previous possession. They got the onside kick recovery. They very well could have scored a touchdown to secure the last-second backdoor cover. But the first pass from Dylan Sterling Cole on that drive was intercepted by the Rattlers secondary. And we actually needed a 4th down and 10 conversion from the Rattlers on their final drive to put the game away for good. They were able to obviously get that, kneel out the rest of the clock, and that is how that game ended. So our flat pay was a little bit more than our weighted pay, simply because the weighted bet didn't have as much on it as the following game did, which was the Massachusetts Pirates and the Green Bay Blizzard. Absolutely whirlwind finish, and my gosh, this bet was looking so good. The Blizzard led by as many as 18 in the third quarter. Heck, if you had money line for Green Bay, you were licking your chops up until Massachusetts decided to show up for the fourth quarter. They got basically the exact string of drive outcomes that doomed them in last year's playoff game against Sioux Falls, where they basically needed to score 3 times and come up with at least 2 defensive stops. And all of those conditions were met. Green Bay actually had a chance to win the game. They had a second down, I believe, on the Pirates' 12-yard line, and that front 3 from the Pirates forced a Max Myler pass into the end zone that was intercepted by Matt Elam, one of the newest additions to that Pirates secondary. And the game ended as a 44-40 final. And we ended up losing by the hook. I mean, anytime that you lose by the hook, it automatically qualifies as a bad beat. But this one was especially brutal, considering where right before kickoff, the line had actually moved from Green Bay plus 3.5 to Green Bay plus 4.5, and then it moved again to Green Bay plus 5.5 shortly before that game closed. Just absolutely silly how that works sometimes. So on that topic, the way that we evaluate bets from this standpoint is we are locking in our bets as they stand at end of day Wednesday evening. So if they do happen to change, they'll be evaluated kind of post-mortem at that rate from a full season analysis standpoint. But from week to week, we're going to be looking at those as we wager them. So the absurd thing about it is Massachusetts still technically didn't cover the pregame plus 5.5 spread, but I still lost this bet anyways. So our first trivial annoyance of the week. Hopefully we won't suffer a loss that improbably awful as that one did. And then you see our year-to-date results in that middle table there. $6.64 net loss on the weighted method, 91-cent loss on the flat betting method. Really, our only path to a net gain this past week, because we only had 2 games, was by winning both games. Or in the case of the weighted method, if we had placed a little bit more on Arizona, Northern Arizona, than Massachusetts, Green Bay. I'll have a parlay tracker here as well starting next week as we get more of those. So again, I do want to take just a moment to put out a few disclaimers. We are going over sports wagering concepts here. So the lines and odds that I'm going to use are going to be coming directly from DraftKings Sportsbook, unless I otherwise specify, like if they happen not to be available on a Wednesday, for example, which I've never seen happen before. It's rare, but I also have seen scenarios where lines for the week don't come out until like 7 p.m. on Wednesday. So we'll keep a lookout for that as we go week to week here. But again, unless I otherwise say, we're going to DraftKings Sportsbook for those metrics. And again, this is purely for entertainment, curiosity, education, whatever you want to call it. We're not gaming here for the purpose of making money. It's a nice added bonus if we do, but really the idea here is to try to leverage statistics and other subjective factors to see where is the value in these offerings. So it's really more of an experiment that way than a money-making scheme. So that goes along the lines of, you're more than welcome to tail my bets here, but if you do, please do so responsibly. Have a budget, set your limits. Practice responsible gaming habits, and if your loved one is having trouble with problem gaming, there are a bunch of resources at the state and federal level that you can go to for help on that. Haveagameplan.org is one of my favorite examples. They debunk a bunch of gaming myths, sort of fallacies that they've seen as well, and they offer some pretty good pointers as well on that topic. So, without further ado, let's look at the 6-game slate. That is week 2. Nope, get back here. There we go. All right, so we have a 2-game slate on Friday night. Games will be kicking off, I should say. Still got the March Madness in my mind, apparently. So our first game, 8 o'clock kickoff, we have the Sioux Falls Storm and Quad City Steamwheelers in a battle between the two most recent Eastern Conference champions. Quad City's laying 4.5 points. Over under set at 91.5. Sioux Falls has plus 130 on the money line, and Quad City minus 155. This is going to be a fascinating game to see, simply because the look of both teams are going to be completely different than the ones that we've seen in the recent past. For starters, for Sioux Falls, for the first time in essentially 2 decades, Curtis Riggs is not the head coach. He retired in the offseason. Same deal with quarterback Lorenzo Brown. So there's a lot of new pieces there in Sioux Falls that are going to try to gel together and come up with a team that can make another playoff run, similar to the one that they went on a season ago, which took them all the way to Henderson for the championship, where they wound up coming short against the Bay Area Panthers. Quad City, their opponent, their fierce rival, also a team that has experience playing in the IFL championship. They got there in 2022, but lost by 2 points to the Northern Arizona Wranglers. So recent championship heartbreak in the minds of both teams, and each one is going to try to start the season on the right foot, 1-0. And notable for Quad City too, and Commissioner Ty Tryon mentioned this in his Inside the IFL weekly bit yesterday. Quad City's got a new quarterback. It is not going to be E.J. Hilliard, at least to start. And that is a significant loss. That leaves whoever starts at quarterback for Quad City some giant shoes to fill, for sure. That said, you look at this recent history between these two teams, it has been dominated by the home team, which won all 3 meetings a season ago. And I believe it was either 2 of 3 or 3 of 4 in 2022. So the home team is a fairly safe bet here. When I ran my numbers, it was giving me Quad City at 2.5 points. So 4.5 seems a little steep to me. And on its own, Moneyline is not offering much here. Like, I'll throw it in here as an example. If you do $10 on Quad City Moneyline, you're only getting basically $6 and a handful of change. That's really not worth it to me. I'd need to see this go down to a minus 125 to justify looking at it further. So instead, what my play is going to be here is our first crack at an over-under bet. And I'm going to take the under for this one, simply because I see this game kind of having that tentative feel-it-out process as both teams try to come up with their new identity for 2024. If we look at the first meeting between these two teams last year, it was another early matchup. That game ended 36-34. Quad City won it at the Vibrant Arena in Moline, which gave us a combined point total of 70. And that was with Lorenzo Brown and EJ Hilliard. So I do like this number. It's a full 13 touchdowns plus the hook. So really the only thing that we have to be slightly concerned about is special teams plays along with chunk plays from the offensive side. So give me Sioux Falls, Quad City under 91.5 as the under. I'm expecting to start 3-0 on the young season. Second game of the slate. It's another Friday night kickoff, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. The Tulsa Oilers opening on the road for the second year in a row against the Frisco Fighters. This one is really interesting to me because from the spread standpoint, on both occasions last year, in this meeting in Frisco and the reverse fixture in Tulsa, Frisco was actually laying at least 30 points in both games. And rather unsurprisingly, Tulsa covered on both occasions. But Frisco looks as deadly as ever. Their winning percentage as a franchise in the regular season is right around the 84-85% neighborhood, which is astounding, to say the least. They've built up a winning culture there, and I'm expecting them to start off with a bang. They get TJ Edwards back at quarterback, the reigning IFL MVP, some other returning players on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. They do not have first-team All-IFL defensive back Cordell Jackson. He signed with the UFL. But this team is just ready to play week in, week out. Say what you want about their postseason success or lack thereof. This team knows how to play ball. And Tulsa is trying to figure that out. They were involved in a lot of close games last year, but the majority of those came within the friendly confines of the Box Center. So my play here, and this is my play of the week, Frisco laying 16.5. I think this line should be at least 21 points. That's a level of confidence that I have in arguably the best team in the IFL at home. Last year, they were undefeated when playing at the Comerica Center with an average margin of victory around 23 points. Now, they did have some outlier victories, wins by 40, 50 points, but those were offset by some close calls where they won by like 10, 13 points. So in a balancing act here, I like Frisco on the spread. Last year, Tulsa at Frisco was a 35-13 game in Tulsa's first game as a franchise. I'm not expecting it to be that low scoring again, but I do think Frisco sets the tone with the potential to boat race the Oilers out of this thing early on. So Frisco on the spread, favorite play of the week. I believe I did a weighted bet of $14 on that one, which is my highest weighted bet of the wagers in the field. Moving on to Saturday's games. We'll start with the first of two 7 o'clock Eastern time kickoffs. The Iowa Barnstormers against the Green Bay Blizzard. And Iowa, let's put it simply, last year was a lost season for them. I had initially predicted them to finish second in the East for 2023. And then the injuries happened. DJ Peterson, their star dual threat quarterback, tears his ACL, which ironically happened in Green Bay on their second or third game of the season. And he misses the entire year. And that just left the offense in such shambles. The defense felt the ill effects of it as well. And yeah, I mean, they had a couple of surprising performances last year. hanging 70 plus on the Pirates, 80 plus on Quad City. But really, those were 2 wins out of 3 on the season. For the most part, it just set Iowa back so much. So they're on the road to redemption, I guess you could call it, with Peterson expected to retake the reins at quarterback for a completely brand new Iowa Barnstormers offense. Antonio Wimbush is not on the roster. He signed with Vegas in the offseason. So it's really a blend of names that I really haven't heard of before. So the sledding's going to be tough for them on the road to start. Green Bay, we obviously know what happened to them last week, losing that 18-point lead in basically 20 minutes of play to the Pirates. But I'm going to say go back to the well with the Blizzard on the spread. Because think about it. The Blizzard got up by 18 against the Mass Pirates, who a lot of people within the IFL are giving credit as a top 3 team in the league. They just didn't happen to close it out. So this profiles as the absolutely perfect get-right game for Green Bay to get that first win of the season. And my model has this line at Green Bay minus 14.5. So very good value picking at basically any sort of double-digit win gets us to the finish line. And, from those first 3 quarters of the game last week, Green Bay showed us what they're capable of and kind of reaffirmed why I graded them so highly in my preseason rankings. So in this game, Iowa Green Bay, play the Blizzard on the spread for the second week in a row. Next game, 7 o'clock, Jacksonville at Massachusetts. These teams meeting for the first time since 2019, when they were both members of the National Arena League. The Sharks coming over from that league as reigning champions, a title that they will not get the chance to defend this year, obviously. And they have their sights set on another indoor football trophy. We're talking about a franchise that has that NAL title. They also won it in, I think, 2019, I believe. And they're also Arena Bowl 24 champions from 2011, back in the second reboot of the AFL. So, like Massachusetts, the Sharks have seen success pretty much everywhere they have gone. So, if you looked at the future forecast last week, you're looking at a team that's got the 5th, 6th shortest odds, and they haven't even played a down of IFL football yet. And transferring over from the NAL, the Sharks are going to have to adjust to no longer playing Ironman football. They've been playing with the rebound nets for a year or 2. Those are obviously not a staple of IFL ball. But we're going to find out a lot about this Jacksonville team in this game. As for the Pirates, this is their first game at their new arena, the Tasonga Center, on the campus of UMass Lowell. And by all accounts, it is an absolutely gorgeous venue. I'm actually going to have the chance to attend that game. So it's going to be a good one. And I look at the over-under. That number is very high. The Sharks did score 62, 63 points a game last year in the NAL. But let's be honest, that league was in a little bit of a kerfuffle in 2023. They had the whole Albany Empire situation. The Fayetteville Mustangs, I think, didn't even finish the season. So the NAL kind of was just piecing things together as they went along. Only 5 teams finished the season. There are really only 2 or 3 teams that were even remotely competitive from that group. So this will obviously be a much steeper challenge for Jacksonville. That said, I take a look at this rivalry, And this boils down to one of those times where you just have to concede where one team just has the number over the other. The Sharks are 4-1 all time in this series, including each wins in each of their last 4. And also, they haven't lost on the road against the Pirates this season. So that makes Jacksonville moneyline a very worthy roll of the dice. And this will be my first attempt at replicating that insane stretch of moneyline betting that we went on a season ago. There's terrific value in this bet. I think I have Jacksonville at 46% to win in my model. And it remains to be seen exactly how the Pirates kind of play within that new environment. I mean, it is a home game, but they're playing at Lowell for the very first time. So there might be, a breaking in process to the new home. So give me the upset special here. I will take the Sharks money line. And quite honestly, for the Pirates, as impressive as that fourth quarter comeback was, I have a hard time overlooking the rough 3 quarters that preceded it. So let's go upset special there. On Sunday, 6 p.m. Eastern kickoff, the Arizona Rattlers playing their second game of the season in their new home. Like the Pirates, they're also relocating within the same state. About a 45-minute drive to Desert Diamond Arena in Glendale. There, they will host the Vegas Nighthawks, and they've got high aspirations for this season. This is year 3 for them, as well as head coach Mike Davis. They brought in some new pieces, including Jorge Reyna and Jerome Johnson at quarterback, Antonio Wimbush at running back. They also brought back Quentin Randolph at receiver. So on paper, the offense looks like it could make some noise. But what we're looking for from the Nighthawks this season is consistency. We've seen them come up with random spike performances in the recent past. Like 2 years ago, they went to Worcester, beat the Pirates. Last year, they ended up beating Arizona and Drew Powell's first game back from injury. So we know that there is upside there. But we have not seen that translate on consecutive weeks. So that'll be the challenge for the Nighthawks this season. And they open with a really, really tough date. So I do like Arizona on the spread here, but my sneaky pick here is going to be taking the under at 96.5. And there's a couple of things about this that I feel really confident about with this decision. Starting with the fact that if you look at last year's over-under performances, both of these teams had a winning record to the under. Arizona was 8-7, Vegas was 9-6, and this number sits right around that 97.5 number that we talked about, where the under was winning at a 70% clip. And I believe that this pick holds up with or without Dalton Snead available for this game. He left after the first half of the Northern Arizona game. Supposedly it was an undisclosed injury, at least according to the IFL's recap on their website. So we'll have to see if he plays. If he does, this might be a game where Arizona could put up, high 50s, low 60s, which automatically puts any under bet in danger. But I believe the Rattlers defense, what I saw from them last week on the road against the Wranglers, they can pretty much put the stops on anyone that they want on their A game. So I will play Vegas, Arizona under 96.5. And lastly, we get Monday Night Football. And another intriguing matchup here between two Western Conference teams that are going to be battling it out for what's likely to be that fourth and final playoff spot, with those big three of Arizona, Tucson, and Bay Area covering the top of the table. We've got the San Diego Strike Force and the Duke City Gladiators. And anytime that those two teams meet in any capacity, everybody's mind automatically defaults to the whole Nate Davis narrative. So if you're unfamiliar with Nate Davis, you're going to love watching him play. He is arguably the best pure passer in the IFL. And between Duke City and San Diego last season, he threw 67 touchdown passes, which easily paced the entire IFL. I don't think anybody had any more than 55, I want to say. So with Davis at the helm, even with the Strike Force losing a couple pieces in free agency, like Eddie Vander and Kentrez Bell, this still is an offense that could prove to be deadly, among the top 5 or top 4 in the league, if they're able to reach that level, which with Nate Davis, anything is possible. Duke City, on the other hand, we're going to have to see who they start at quarterback. They've got Taz Wilson, longtime IFL veteran, J. Rue Campbell, another guy who's been around the block for a little bit. One of those guys will start. They also brought in Justin Stockton at running back and Laquiviante Gonzalez at wide receiver. Two talented players that I'm very familiar with from the 2021 season, when both players won the IFL championship as members of the Pirates. But I think we've got a good game on our hands here. The fact that it's in Duke City definitely contributes quite a bit to why this game is projected to be so close. But in a scenario like this, I like to take the team that offers the most weekly upside, at least on paper. And right now, that is the San Diego Strike Force. The question is going to be their defense for sure. It was a susceptible unit a season ago. But I feel like that there's a lot of room for growth there. And I mentioned that in my preseason preview. Duke City, I'm just not sure what they're going to be able to do. The talent level, at least on paper, is not as high as some of the other teams in the league. That can obviously change at some point throughout the season, like we saw last season with San Diego seemingly dead in the water before trading for Nate Davis. But yeah, this one should be a barn burner, a good way to close out week 2. And I will go San Diego. I actually, funny enough, I locked this in at minus 115 earlier today. So it's curious that the line moved basically from favoring San Diego to favoring Duke City. Not sure if it was just a typo on the odds maker's end or what it was, but we are talking about a 3-point shift in the spread. So a little weird that money's going in favor of Duke City. But we have a history here of not exactly following along with the public betting trends. So I stand by San Diego. You can get them at laying just a nickel. Great value there. My model says San Diego 60% chance to win. So this is another one of my most confident picks. I think this one is second highest as far as the weighted method goes, only to the aforementioned Tulsa Frisco game. So that is our single game lineup. Now we can take a look at what can we do as far as a 3-leg parlay goes. So the way that I did it on the written post over at SC2C was taking one game per week here and trying to come up with one bet type. One of each bet type, constituting the 3 legs and see if there's a good one that we can come up with. So the one that I had proposed on there was Friday's Sioux Falls Quad City game, taking the Steamwheelers on the money line. Jacksonville, Massachusetts, staying under 98.5. And Arizona, the Rattlers covering the spread at the hook, at basically 2 touchdowns minus the hook, to give us a pretty appetizing 5-1 payout here. And it's nice that these games go in a little bit of sequential order. And I mentioned how, as a single bet, I don't like Quad City on the money line, but as part of a parlay, it's a good leg to have, where if it goes well, it gives the parlay some steam heading into day 2. Just realizing total pun intended there. I mentioned this over-under amount a little bit. We're talking about a number where the under cashes at a pretty absurdly disproportionate clip. And then this Arizona-Vegas game, I have Arizona as 17.5-point favorites in my projection. So put those all together. The parlay comes out as pretty close to 5-1 odds. So if we throw in a $10 bet there, and I'm actually not able to. There we go. For right now, if we do a $10 bet, the max payout would be just a shade under $60. So that's what I will do there. And for those of you unfamiliar with what a parlay is, I probably should have described that first. But essentially, it's a series of bets that you put together where if you get every leg right, you win the bet, and it's usually for a stupid high payout like this one is. So that is a look at the game-by-game slate for week 2. Let's check out the futures forecast here. So this market is set to try to predict the IFL champion on August 17th as it stands currently. So with the win last week, Arizona leapfrogs Frisco as the odds-on favorite. You're looking at plus 330 for them. Frisco's odds stayed the same as they did last week. Curiously, despite the win last week, the Pirates stayed at plus 650, which is the same as they were last week. So pretty solid value if you didn't have the chance to lock in the Pirates for an IFL championship and you wanted to do so now. You could get them at the same odds that you could have last week, and now we know that they're 1-0. So definitely a significant sort of trend there. San Antonio is right up there too. 7th shortest odds at a 10-1 payout potential. Northern Arizona dropped a little bit, not surprising considering the 0-1 start. Green Bay also dropped down to plus 2,200, which matches them up with the San Diego Strike Force. And Tulsa, Iowa, and Duke City round out the bottom of this list. Except last week they were at plus 2,800. This week they're at plus 3,000. So a little bit more of a higher payout potential if you're interested in seeing one of these teams go from bottom feeder to legitimate candidate for the championship. Tulsa, I feel like, will be really popular simply because of the narrative that the IFL has gone through in each of the past 2 seasons, where the team with the worst record the following year, complete turnaround, made the playoffs, won it all. So definitely worth a little bit of sprinkle if you are curious and have the money to burn. But I will be tracking these as well as the season goes along. And we'll have more of a visual detail of what that looks like the deeper that we get into the season. So that is it. That is going to wrap up this video portion of Wager Wednesday. So For all of those who are out there, thank you very much for watching this week. Let's print out the big bucks, and I will see you at the cashier next week. Good night.